So when it happened, I was like, okay, emotional, spiritual seatbelts buckled. Here we go. And all is well. I'm really grateful that my dentist is nice and just a loving human being and gets it. So, okay. Here we go. Yay. Welcome everybody to today's Eat and Greet, where hopefully in the next hour or so, we're going to give you something that is worth the time you took to show up. And we will, because I have gone out and found Miss Alex Trenoweth to come to the cyber house. And I'm just so excited. I feel like female admiration is bubbling today. Alex, you've got these books out. You're an incredible astrologer. And now you've got this article that has just kind of changed the game. I mean, I just want to not sit here and stare at you for an hour, but I kind of want to stare at you for an hour.
It's been an amazing day for sure.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So can you tell us just a little bit, about you? How did you get into astrology? What are you doing in astrology?
Well, pretty much the way anybody else gets into astrology, in that the horoscopes. My mom was reading the horoscopes, and I'm a Cancer, but my birthday is July 20th. And so she was reading the descriptions of a Cancer, and she said home loving and shy. And I was like, hold on, that doesn't sound like me at all. And so I would, when someone asked me what my sign was, I'd always say I'm on the cusp of Leo. I never said I was a Cancer. And when I was at university, I met somebody, and she said she was an astrologer. And she asked me, what my star sign was. And I said, well, she said, I bet you're a Leo, she said. And I said, no, I'm not a Leo. I'm a Cancer. And she says, I bet you've got a Leo moon going on or something going on. And so she, looked at an ephemeris, and which to me looked like a book of magical incantations, with all those symbols and all those numbers. And I really love numbers. And she says, your moon is in Leo. And she says, and I'm almost certain that your ascendant is Gemini. And if that's true, then your Mercury is in Leo, and that's your ruling planet. And that just blew me away. I mean, to feel like a Leo, and to, and I was born at night too. So my moon I feel very strongly resonating with my moon. And that was it. I was hooked. I started drawing up charts. I got a really, what I now know is a beginning astrologer book. But for me, it was something that was quite challenging to get to grips with. And then I moved to England, and I was listening to morning TV, and a British astrologer called Russell Grant was talking about aspects. And I thought, hold on, there's somebody else on this earth who speaks the language. And from that moment on, I just realized I had to find these people. So I found my way to Nick Campion's books. And, I started drawing more and more charts and collecting things. I started going to astrology camps. And, that was just it. I was just totally immersed. And then I started being a teacher. I met this wonderful astrologer called Jonathan Kaner, a very famous British astrologer. And we became very close friends because we have children the same age. And we used to camp together and things like that. And I've only realized, because he died a few years ago, that he was so important to me. Every major turning point of my life. He's the reason why I became a teacher, because he did my chart. And he says, you need to be in a classroom. He encouraged me to study with the Faculty of Astrological Studies. And he was kind of like my quiet cheerleader. He loaned me his laptop so I could type up the exams. He did so much for me. And he helped me select my MA topic. He helped me, encourage me to write a book. So, I'm full of memories today, because the article that was written that appeared in the Daily Mail is a newspaper that Jonathan used to write for. So I'm full of memories of Jonathan today.
Yeah, just in time for the sun to come on into Pisces, huh?
Yeah.
Just to meld it and assimilate it all back. And everybody, I have put the link to Alex's article in the chat box as well. And I'll make sure it's below the video so that you can see it as well. And you just, God, go get an eyeball full of what's going on in that article. Because we were talking about it before, and it's years and years of hard work for you putting that in there and kind of getting to do the victory arms today, because it's a win, but it is just also a win for this community, for what we're trying to do around here as well. So It's a good day for memories and victories, I think.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. And actually, it's, I'll just share this with you really quickly, but we have someone in our chat box who just found out they're having a boy today, and they are here to hear your talk because that's important.
Oh, fantastic.
I know. Look at this community. It is really quite good. Really quite good. So, with all of this that you came and you got into it, how did you land in the space of children and parents and the family dynamic? How did that happen?
Well, when I started teaching, first day on the new job, my real name isn't Alex. I have a legal name, and they were calling me by this legal name. And so I had a word with the head teacher and said, I don't really like this name because it's a name that only bankers and doctors use. And I don't want to hear from either of them. So I'd really like you to call me Alex. And she said that she'd think about it. And then the next day, I was formally summoned to her office. And in no uncertain terms, she made it very clear that if a parent complained about me being an astrologer, I could lose my job because I was bringing the school into disrepute because it was a Christian academy. So, I hadn't even finished my first week of school as a qualified teacher, and I was already being threatened for being an astrologer. So I don't know what they thought I was going to do with astrology. I guess maybe they thought I was going to make a prediction. Oh, for goodness sake. But as a teacher, I make thousands of grade predictions over an academic year. And what I say as a teacher, what I predict as a teacher could do more harm and damage to a child's development and their confidence. I could determine which stream they get into. I can determine whether or not they get into a college or university of their choice. Yeah. I could damage a child parent relationship with what I say as a teacher. So I could do more damage with what I predict as a teacher than anything I could say as an astrologer. And the other thing is, forbidding me from doing something is a pretty sure way to guarantee I'm going to try to sneak it in. So, of course, I started off with star signs because we have the student states of birth. And so I thought it would be a great idea if I organized my seating plan. I put all the fire signs in one section, all the earth signs in the next section, all the air signs in the next section, and all the water signs in the fourth section. And if you're a teacher and you're listening to this, don't ever do that. Because what happened, of course, was the fire signs took over. The air signs shuttled across the earth signs at the fire signs. And the earth signs just kind of sat there in silent shock while the water signs just started hugging themselves and rocking, self-soothe from all the noise in the classroom. So, I knew that was, astrology is a powerful thing in the classroom, but it's too much data to manage. On top of causing, a riot in the classroom, it's too much data for me to remember. And so teaching is a tough profession. And I was teaching teenagers, and I was emotionally exhausted. The only reason why I became a teacher was to pay for astrology classes. That was it.
Yeah.
And I was tired. I was, I thought I'd have long weekends, Christmas and Easter, and a gloriously long summer holiday to study and practice astrology. But of course, that's not the way it works in teaching, because teaching involves sucking every last bit of energy and then some out of you. So, I was wrecked. I was emotionally wrecked. And I thought, this is not for me. Whatever I'm trying to do as an astrologer, this is not the way, because I don't have time to study and practice astrology. And one day I was teaching, thinking, this is going to be my last week in school. I'm going to give my notice in, and this is too much. And I even remember what I was teaching. I was teaching Macbeth, and I was talking about Macbeth, and I looked out at them, and I thought to myself, hold on, you guys, for the most part, all have the same Jupiter sign, and you all have the same Saturn sign. And your Jupiter and your Saturn are playing off my Jupiter and Saturn. And it was as close to an epiphany as any event in my life. And it changed my whole entire way of thinking. So from then, I just observed how different year groups learn and their learning styles. And I adapted it to astrological theory. And then when I had all 12 signs, then I wrote the book Growing Pains, which is written for parents and teachers of teenagers. And, I got to say, this way of thinking changed my life. It saved my teaching career. And I became, instead of a burned out teacher who only lasts the average 5 years that teachers last in the profession, I ended up being a career teacher. And I fully credit astrology for doing that. It made me more organized. It made me more aware of the things that I needed to work on, because I Saturn in Pisces. So you can guess that organizing myself was really difficult. And once I understood this, I had no problems. Well, I had problems, but not the same problems I was having before, because all teachers have problems. But astrology made things a lot easier.
Wow. And isn't it? It's just so interesting to hear about that moment in the classroom where you kind of turn and you're like, well, wait a minute. Just a pure, good brilliance has dropped in here kind of moment. And I know those, and I have had those. And it's like it screeches the record for a second and turns the room around. And it's like, wait a minute, literally having an epiphany.
Yeah.
And they're good. They're good moments. They're good moments. So since then, what has it looked like since you fell into the pocket of writing Growing Pains? And oh my God, Alex, what was it like to write Growing Pains? What was it like to write an astrology book?
Well, hold on, let me show the cover.
Were there growing pains in this?
It's I still had the problem that teaching takes up a lot of your time. I mean, we don't work 9 to 3. We work 7 to 8 or 7 to 10 o'clock at night if we had parents' evenings or whatever. But Growing Pains flew out of me because I had all my notes and all my observations, the case studies I chose. I didn't have to make them work for my framework. They just flew out of me. So, over the weekends, over a couple of months, it just came out, and it was quite miraculous, really.
Oh my gosh. And so here you are then today, and you have traveled. It was so funny. I was just talking to someone just before this, and I said, yeah, I'm getting ready to hop on with Alex, and we gushed about you. And they said, where in the world is Alex right now? I was like, God, I think she's still in England because we can't go anywhere, but how fun. That's like, where in the world is Alex San Diego, You're just popping around and highly in demand to teach and help people understand these parent-child dynamics by using astrology. So what's big on the plate for you right now before we get to our topic?
Yeah, so I'm just in the final stage of editing my next book, which is a bit of a departure from my research, because I've been going at this research hardcore for like 8 years. So I wanted to do something different. And I'm doing the astrology of actors and the famous people they have portrayed. So for example, like Elton John, Taron Egerton was the actor who portrayed him. And then so I look at Elton John and the synastry between Taron Egerton and him, and also the transits of when the movie was released. So I have over 100 case studies, starting all the way from 1930s with Mata Hari and Greta Garbo, all the way up to Rocket Man. So it's a really exciting project. It's data heavy, which kind of appeals to the nerd in me, but it's been hard work. It didn't take long to write, but going through the data, it has to be triple checked, of course, by my editor, and that's been a lot of work. But that's what's been occupying my time. And I do a lot of work with ESAR. I'm the CAP ESAR president, which is the certification process that you go through with ESAR. So that's where I am today. And in lockdown, I really hate to say this, but I've had a really good lockdown. I've been so busy, busy with clients, and I know a lot of people have suffered, but I've really kind of enjoyed having those days at my desk. I used to wish for them. I used to wish I had time to do the stuff I really wanted to do. And this past year, I've really been able to focus on that.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I know I just have had much of the same similar situation, and then lobbed an entire YouTube academy onto the planet, which fantastic. You are going to come over and teach with us this year.
Yes, I'm so looking forward to it. I'm really excited to be able to give something to the community, and just work with other great astrologers, and it's really exciting to me.
Yeah, it's going to be good. So we'll talk more about that. You guys, the YouTube Academy information is coming out. We've got your resource lists together so you can watch for all of that coming out here just in the next couple of days. But today, Alex, you've got stuff to tell us about this Jupiter-Saturn situation happening between parents and children. And man, I don't know. I'm a Saturn Libra, and I've got a Saturn Leo. And it's an interesting little dance with that particular child. And I look at my other one and think, oh my gosh, okay, this is so much easier. And then the dynamics here are easier. So, I'm just interested. How does this work? How can we use
Yeah,
this?
so for the parent or the teacher or the authority figure, because even if you don't have children or you don't teach children, some way or another, Saturn's going to make you into an authority figure to somebody. Now,
Mm,
if you don't understand the person you're an authority to, that other person will understand. And they'll find a way, they'll find the chinks in your armor and they'll get to you. And this is what, the way it is with children. They'll find your weaknesses. They'll catch you when you're tired. They'll catch you when, you're fed up and you think you can't take anymore. And, you'll be challenged and you'll be stretched. And if you can understand your Saturn, it helps you build up your endurance, develop your patience, and help you understand what you need to develop in regards to your own self-discipline.
oh,
Now,
brilliant.
Jupiter is also very important, but that's more for the child's learning style. So if you're a teacher, every year group has its own Jupiter sign. And the way I used to work with it, because I could be teaching 11-year-olds one lesson for 1 hour, and the next lesson I could be teaching 18-year-olds for the next hour. And so just understanding the Jupiter helped me to be prepared for the next class. It helped me change gears.
Yeah.
And also the other thing is, I found that a lot of astrologers don't understand Jupiter and Saturn themselves. I mean, they kind of got the idea that Jupiter is for expansion and Saturn is for discipline, but it works in terms of development. So you have your Jupiter sign when you're born, and at the age of 3, transiting Jupiter will square your natal Jupiter, and that's a huge milestone for a child. That's when they're walking without assistance. They're able to speak clearly enough to be understood by a stranger. The parent no longer needs, the stroller and the playpen and all the nappies, diapers, and the equipment, and they are freer, which is a kind of a Jupiter word. At the age of 6, children that go to a normal comprehensive school will be learning how to read. They'll be at the age of 9, which is one of my favorite years to teach. They have the closing Jupiter square. And that's when they're starting to distinguish between reality and fantasy. So they're no longer afraid of the boogeyman under the bed. They're afraid of what they read in the paper. And I feel absolutely awful for the children who've had to grow up in COVID times, for the fear. I mean, as an adult, the fear has been a great stress. But for a child, and God bless those teenagers that are going through puberty under lockdown, and the parents, oh gosh, I just it's heartbreaking. Then the Jupiter return around the age of 11 or 12, children go to different school. They go to the bigger school where they learn more subjects. They have different teachers, because in elementary school or primary school, they're taught in like little families of classrooms. But when they're in at that age, they start to expand out like we would expect. And I tell parents, this is your year. If you're going to plan for anything, the Jupiter return year, take your child to a foreign country if you can. Get them speaking a different language. Let them experiment with different belief systems. But that's when all the brain development is going on. And it's a really exciting time. So with Saturn, it's Jupiter's every 3 years for the development. Saturn's every 7. So at 7 years old is the first Saturn square. And we were just talking about teeth, but that's when children lose their milk teeth. At 14 is when a lot of children have braces to straighten out their adult teeth. At 20 is when the wisdom teeth come in. Mm. And then hopefully by 30, they won't start losing their teeth. But, we know that, the Saturn rules the hard parts of the body, the skin, eyes, teeth, hair. So, usually there's, a great, a feeling that they're getting old, or they're maturing in some way, or they've had some sort of success. And the Saturn return can be joyful. I read so much on Twitter about Saturn return being the worst year of your life. It doesn't have to be. If you understand your Saturn, you can graduate your Saturn at your Saturn return, and it could be a time of fulfillment, of achievement, and knowing that you're doing something right.
Yeah. And oh my gosh, we've talked about it 1,000 times over here, but I have Saturn in Libra, and it is retrograde. And at my Saturn return, it was just about 6 months after it happened, I just went straight to Saturn and I said, okay, I'm not getting it. What do you need me to learn? because I had just been in love with everybody. I think I had tried on every relationship between 18 and 30, and I went straight to Saturn. And it was exactly that. It was a good return. It was a joyful, freedom giving return from there on. And my relationships have looked nothing like they did before. When you know your Saturn, you can really go right to these planets and say, I'm here and I'm listening.
That's true. That's true.
That's beautiful. So how does this work then with the parents and the children? So the Saturn makes you the authority figure, but then that Saturn is attempting to speak to the Jupiter?
Well, yes, and to the child Saturn. I mean, how a child is going to accept your authority has much to do with their Saturn sign too. And if there's two parents in that relationship, there's a third factor there as well. So a lot of the work that I do with families, usually it's the mom that approaches me first, and I can almost guarantee it'll be the first time mom the child will be around 13, and it'll be the oldest child, because the parents are in uncharted territory. Sure. And 13, according to my research, is 13-year-olds, I love you. Okay, this is not meant to hurt your feelings, but 13 is a challenging year. It's the year group that the teachers find the most challenging, and it's when children are starting to separate from their parents, and they're also they're not listening to their parents and teachers anymore. They're starting to listen to their peers, and that's quite dangerous. So what's going on here is that this is the first Ptolemaic aspect from an outer planet. So it's Uranus sextile Uranus at that age, as well as transiting Jupiter sextile at natal position. So you got this double whammy of rebellion magnified, and a lot of things can go wrong at that age. The brain isn't fully developed. A child isn't able to think ahead to consequences yet, because they don't have that all that frontal lobe area developed yet, and that doesn't the brain develops at an exponentially fast rate until the Saturn opposition at around the age of 15. So an awful lot's going on, but if you understand the pattern, and you could be prepared for it, and you can at the Jupiter return, you can really start to prepare your child and share with your child what is going on. I write reports, automatic reports, put the data in, you get a printed report, and I talk about this because this is a definite pattern that you can follow, anybody can follow. Mm-hmm. And I think it's enormously helpful for a parent and a child to read these reports together, because it provides an opportunity for the parent to share their experiences with the child, because adults typically remember their adolescence in very negative terms. You ask a teenager what it's like to be 13, and they're excited, and they like it, but they don't have a point of reference. It's not until you get to be an adult and you look back and you think, oh God, was I gawky, and was I a weirdo back then, or whatever. They have really negative experiences of this, but I just think it's because adults do have that reference point, and it can be quite traumatic for them. But giving them this opportunity to talk to the children lets a child know, okay, this is normal for me to go through. My parents went through it, and it helps strengthen that relationship, which will eventually they grow away from their parents. It's a natural process, and we don't have that separation anxiety that can cause a lot of conflict between parent and child.
Yeah. And one of the things that, just in preparation for our talk, I've been thinking back in my girls' development, because I have a 13 and I have a 17-year-old. And I think a portion of it, without knowing specifically, how we were going to go into this, understanding the astrology just enough to just know the cycles, right? Without even knowing exactly what to do with those. I watched my youngest daughter has a Jupiter in Sagittarius. And so we just handed her language. We said, why don't you try that? And it has stuck. And she has just come out of her shell. But being able to understand, that we could hand her something like that. And it's like, she needs to have a thing she can be away from us and do on her own and go connect with other people and have these conversations. And I feel like it has been the 13-year-old saving grace over here, just even understanding the cycles.
Yep. it could be enormous help for the child too, to understand the cycles too, so they can kind of see what's happening and understand a little bit, because it's very bewildering. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's very late here. I'm not able to talk properly. It's very confusing for children to navigate through adolescence. It's it's a time when people are relating to them in a different way. For girls, it's really difficult to have this developing body that men stare at. And I often say in my lectures that I really think that the middle school years, the genders should be separated if it's possible, because it's so difficult. Girls need to be with other girls, or girls who identify as girls, to get used to their cycles, their new bodies, and without the boys. Because the other thing we know about brain development is that girls get that burst of development before boys, about a year before boys. So they're more mentally ready for the rigors of the classroom than boys are. And so just giving them that little bit of space so they can get used to each other is going to be helpful. Maybe bring them back together in high school or whatever, and let them learn and explore and develop their identities.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I do enjoy the laughter around that with both of the girls, because I remember, look, I was just very voluptuous at 12 and took it forward. And so, as they're just always naked in their rooms. They're just always Alex. And I'm like, God, I remember it. I was a sight to behold. I'm like, look at all this. So there's a sense of humor, of being able to have that ease with them, that I think, again, astrology and the discussion of the experience helps to ease the family dynamic of these transitions. Because I just think it's a flat out miracle that there are adult humans on this planet and we didn't perish somewhere in teenagehood. It's like a gold star if you're an adult.
Yeah. Well, some of you will perish in teenagehood.
Sure.
Your childhood does go away. And when I'm dealing with adults with things like addiction issues or relationship issues, I will often go back to the adolescents and ask them some questions around the problems that they have, because that's the other thing about the teenage brain, is that they thrill seek because they get that little dopamine injection. And they get addicted to that thrill. And so every time they go for the forbidden can of beer, they get the extra thrill of getting away with something. And then it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
Or they find unsuitable people that somehow give them that thrill, and they can't break that habit. So a lot of stuff happens during that very important brain development.
Yes. And so how can, just on the side of maybe the parents, what's your suggestion to them? Is it just to start getting to know these cycles? First of all, just start there.
Yeah. Start with the Saturn sign. Make sure you understand your own Saturn, just like I talked you through the squares and oppositions and things. And that's got to be the first step. And I wish that, for anybody considering being a parent, I wish that they would know this. Because when you understand your Saturn, then you're grounded enough to raise another human being. And because, as you and I both know, being parents, it is tough work. It's relentless. You make mistakes. You feel eaten up with guilt. You want to do your best, but there might be a challenge there. You don't do it, and you get you always feel that you're not quite living up to your responsibility. Now, astrology can't quite take that feeling away, but you can work your Saturn, because Saturn loves to be worked. And the more you work it, the more you practice it, the better you get. And that's got to be the first step, is understanding your Saturn. When you understand your Saturn, then you can start working with your child's Saturn and your child's Jupiter, because what you don't want to be is, you don't want to be that helicopter parent that's in trying to control the child. You want to give them freedom. So, because that's the Jupiter, you want to, encourage the child to be independent but careful. And so it's striking that balance between Saturn and Jupiter that will help the parent support the child, parents, or if there's two parents in the relationship.
Yeah. And now, have you found that in all of these placements, when there are additional challenges like disabilities or things like that, these are still just as applicable to watch the cycle?
Yes, they still are. I mean, obviously, if there's a challenge there, like a physical or a mental challenge there, obviously, a parent might have to draw in other resources, other teachers, and other ways of support, or family or whatever. But yeah, the astrology is still valid there. And as a parent, you can encourage the teacher to be aware of the child's learning style and their way of preferred learning. So you don't have to be, astrology in your face with other people, because we know how people can sometimes have a negative reaction to astrology. But you get enough in there that you can have a good working relationship with the teachers, or the doctors, or whoever that is brought in as an extra support.
And do you think, Alex, that this works? Do you think this works better when we're talking about parents and children in their younger years, like before the Saturn return? Or does this stay applicable as long as you're doing parenting?
Oh, it stays applicable as long as you're doing parenting. Yeah, so knowing your natal Saturn and knowing where you are in the Saturn cycle is going to be a lot of help. So I'm in my closing Saturn square. And so that awareness, because when this last 7 years towards my second Saturn return started, I was in India, and I have Saturn square Venus natally. So when this is going on, I had transiting Saturn opposite my Venus, and I was in India organizing this massive conference, which was extremely exhilarating. But also, after everybody left and I was still working on the next conference, I was on my own in a country where I couldn't speak the language well enough to be conversational. So it was quite a lonely time for me. And of course, there was all this controversy going on about sidereal versus tropical as well, and which I kind of fell in the middle of, and it felt to me very lonely. But because I understood what Saturn was trying to teach me about relationships, it really helped ease my mind and help me to get the support that I needed from the people who could provide it.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. And I can't even imagine just being over in India and I'm just whipping out a conference.
That was, yeah. When I look back on it, it's one of my most fun achievements, but it was a lot of work. Managing I think it was 77 astrologers.
Ooh, that is like herding cosmic mosquitoes.
I was doing things I never thought I'd do. I was menu planning. I was, I was coordinating all sorts of stuff that I never thought I'd do. And I had a wedding the weekend before in South Africa. So the weekend before this big conference, I flew out to do bridesmaid duties for Nick Dagan-Bess and Anna Carapacciano, who were very close friends of mine. I was only there for 3 days in Cape Town and had to come back to India to do this conference.
What a time, right?
It was a bit wild.
It was a bit wild. That's awesome. Okay, so you've got your book, Growing Pains. Any other additional resources you would throw out to people to help them learn and kind of get on the pathway with this?
Well, I'd recommend Growing Pains. Now, it's not a book that's aimed at advanced astrologers. It's aimed at parents and teachers.
Okay.
And I did that deliberately because it's a step beyond sun signs. So it's not difficult to grasp, but it's not, something that's going to be so complicated that you can't use it in a practical way. I also have the Adolescent Report, which you can get through my website, which is very creatively called alextrenoweth.co.uk, or you can get it on Solar Writer, which is a 16-page printout of all the different aspects in your child's chart. You can get it for your child, or you can get it for yourself as well. And that costs about 20 pounds, which is maybe $30 to get it. And it's got original artwork in it and stuff like that. So those two things I would recommend. If you don't know much about astrology, I highly recommend that you find those resources. My website is full of stuff too. Articles, and there's stuff on YouTube with me talking about astrology and education as well.
Okay. And are
It's
your
free. Lots of free stuff up there.
Oh, we like free. That's fun. It's typically in the budget, right? And so right now, are you seeing clients? Are your books open?
Oh, yes, I see a lot of clients. I'm very, very busy. As I said in that article, I've never been busier. My clientele has tripled. I mean, it had already been growing since lockdown, but it tripled in the past couple months. And same with my website traffic. I was worried my website was going to crash today, but it seems to be holding up.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really busy time for astrologers. And we were talking before we started. It's such an exciting time to be an astrologer. I know there's a lot of conflict in the community, a lot of awareness that we're yet to develop. A lot of people who are feeling very vulnerable and sensitive and misunderstood. And as astrologers, it's our job to step up to the plate and put the work in to understand those issues, and to provide support as much as we can. Because we don't see clients because everything is going well.
Right.
We see clients because there's a problem somewhere, and we need to be empathetic towards these problems and as supportive as we can.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. Well, I'm so glad that we got to spend some time today. And I just thank you so much for making time to come and sit with us. This is wonderful.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. It's been great.
Yes, and we'll see more of you just by people going to visit, but also in the academy, which I can't wait to see what you're bringing in there as well. And you guys, I'll make sure that all of Alex's information is below the video, the website, the article. Just I will make sure it is all down there, so you have a direct access link right over there. And if you decide to reach out to Alex, just make sure you tell her we said hi from over here.
Oh yes, please do. If you come see me, make sure you mention Stormie.
Yeah. And
That would
it's
be
so
great.
funny. I just love it. They have been going to see other astrologers and who we do an eat and greet, and they'll say, I'm from the ASF. So if you see that, Alex, you'll know it's us. It's Astrology Soulmate Family. We came up
Oh,
with that in
okay.
our little chat box. Isn't that funny? That's what we do while our guests talk. We talk to each other.
Oh, that's fantastic.
There will be coffee mugs soon. So I look forward to seeing you guys in our next eat and greet. And I'm hoping that in this last bit of time that we spent together, you heard something that was worth the time you took to show up, and definitely piqued some questions or some interest for you as well. And you'll head over and see what Miss Alex has got to offer to what you've got going on. So thanks again, Alex, for coming in with us.
Thank you. Thank you to all the visitors.
Yeah, and we'll see you guys next week, where we will have Elisa Youssef will be here, and Brian Coulter will be back, and we are going to talk about the moons of March next week. So I'll see you guys next week. Bye, everybody.